repeat everything now? No, I won't. Okay, so where would you like me to start?
Well,
or
you know,
take off?
maybe you want to just sort of give some introductory comments about why you chose to leave,
Yeah,
and
okay.
how that built on the circumstances around Chernobyl. Obviously a few years after that situation,
Yeah,
how you were
sure.
able to leave.
Yeah, I was born and grew up in Kiev, capital of Ukraine, and I really didn't feel any suppression or oppression toward Jewish people. And for some time, my family tried to protect me from knowing that. And then I think it's a normal approach for all grandparents or parents just to hide the worst thing from their children, thinking that, yes, the time they will get the same in their lives and just let them live their lives. But then my grandmother was the first who started feeling me all the real horrific event that she went through, and her husband, my grandfather, and then next generation, my mother was also really targeted as a Jewish person, although she was one of the most famous physicians in Kiev. And if it came to see the Communist Party leader, then they would call her, but not for other things like giving a presentation or publishing her article, because her last name was not kosher, say. And then it came my turn, and I was first year student at the medical school, and our dean said that the group, which each group was about 13 to 15 people, the group which does the best, only straight A's, will go to Poland, not to America, but to Poland as a gift. And my group turned to be the best. We had only A's, and there was a big before the party, this was introduction and lots of good words said about our group. And the dean congratulated each of us, and we were patiently waiting for the tickets to go to Poland from Kiev, which is about an overnight train. And then the following day, I heard that we are not going. And the reason was very clear, and the dean who congratulated us before probably missed my last name. And he said, no, this group is not going to Poland because we are ashamed that the person with such last name will represent our medical school. It's all true stories. I see the expressions on people's faces, but this is what it is, and then what it was. So we never went to Poland, and I was unable to go to any of the foreign countries. Austria, during the immigration route, was the first country where I went, because again, for Jewish people, it was almost impossible to go on travel there anywhere. And then I went through medical school, got my PhD, and was very interested in pediatric hematology. Worked as a pediatric hematologist in one of the largest hospitals in Kiev, in Ukraine, and never really thought of leaving the country. My parents never brought up this question. So we just thought that this is the life, this is normal, and we are going to live this life. And then Chernobyl hit, and I became one of the first physician responders to this catastrophic event. And from that time, my perspectives and my career dreams changed. I wanted to be in the field, develop drugs against radiation, and that's all I wanted to do. I didn't want to do hematology or anything else, just that. But that field did not exist. But then, years after the Chernobyl, the government opened the new Institute of Biological and Clinical Studies in Radiation. So all the patients and children and adults who were affected by Chernobyl, they were treated and evaluated with the most modern approaches in science, like cutting edge of science was applied for their conditions. And my former supervisor became the director of that institute. And he chose 3 people from the whole pediatric department who he would love to go with him and get higher position and do the job. And he told me that I'm one of the 3 people, and I was, of course, above the clouds that my dream coming true. And one day he came to work, and he really didn't want even to look at me. And my first thought was, what did I do wrong with the patient? Did I kill anybody? It's all my fault why he's not looking at me. And this lasted for a few days, this very strange on his part relations, new relations. So one day I decided that I want to be brave. I knocked the door and I asked, may I ask you what was going on? And he said, I cannot tell you here, just come to my apartment tonight and we will talk. And this also never happened before. I knew where he lived, but I never had an invitation from the academician, although he was my boss, to visit him. So I came to his apartment. His wife was at home and she's a doctor as well. So they showed me the place on the couch between them. And he said, I have to tell you something, but you just keep it between us. Never, ever tell anybody. But I know that there is such thing as a stature limitation. And since 30 plus years passed, I can tell this story. So he told me that he visited, that as a director, he still had to run and confirm each candidate for the job at this Supreme Institute with the Minister of Health. So he went to see Minister of Health, and he told him that I am getting 3 new doctors with me, and the minister asked, who are these people? So he mentioned 3 names, and 2 names were very clear Ukrainian names. One of the doctor's father worked for KGB. Everything went well. And then he looked at my name and he asked, and what is this? Even didn't have, being nice person to ask, who is this? He asked, and what is this? And my supervisor said, well, this is one of my leading doctors who became a PhD at 28. This is the first one who I have at such young age. And then he thought that mentioning my mother will help me. And because the minister knew my mother, she was treated him. And he said, oh, yeah, no way. She is not going. Such last name, we're not taking. So my supervisor told me this story while I was sitting between him and his wife. And I, of course, was very grateful that he was so honest. And I came home and I cried. I'm not a crying baby, but I did cry. And I said, we're leaving. I'm not staying here anymore. So this was the exact motivation why my family left. So to put it in summary, decades of persecution, personal and professional, of Jewish people, plus all the lies that we experience, all the government lies that we all experienced after Chernobyl was the last straw. And we decided that it's time to go. My daughter was 3 years old at the time, and no, she was 3 at Chernobyl. She was 6 when we decided to leave, and none of us wanted her to go through the same stories or similar stories as we did. Somewhere better.
Very powerful. So I know people have a lot of questions, and yeah, we'll try to speak up a tiny bit. Thank you, Gail. A little louder. Yeah.
I will.
Maybe we could just do one more response and then we can open it up. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what your experiences were when you bought your role.
Mhm. Yeah, I looked at the ad and very creatively said, without stuck in Rome, without a home. And it's really creative, very nice. But what I have to say is that our stay in Rome for 6 months were not a Roman holidays, like in one of my favorite movies where Ingrid Bergman, you probably remember her. And after she's from Sweden, but she wrote, when she was at the peak of her fame, she wrote the letter to Roberto Rossellini, who's Italian producer, who also was peak of his fame. And she wrote, I saw your movie, and I still didn't forget my French. I speak a little bit of German, and in Italian, I know only one word, l'amoi, which is I love you. And if you need a actress for your movie, I am ready. And this is how it all started. So Rossellini wrote her a letter, yes, please come to Italy, and the rest was history. In 1954, they got married. And while the story, I'm bringing it close to my family, that Ingrid Bergman and Rossellini just happened to live at the same place in Italy, which is Santa Marinella, pictured suburbs of Rome, where my family spent 6 months. But again, not a Roman holidays. So first the route first led to Austria. All immigrants were supposed, or refugees, supposed to go to Austria first. And then in Austria, there was a final decision whether family wants to go to Israel, then they will direct flight Vienna, Tel Aviv, or if not, then supposed to go to Italy and wait for a little bit for the permission from the US government to confirm the refugee status and back to the US. But in beginning of the 80s, this refugee status for Soviet Jewish immigrants were just a given a priori. You didn't have to prove any persecution at all. If you want to leave the Soviet Union, you're a refugee, you get the refugee status. Over 5 or 6 years, there were so many Soviet Jewish refugees that United States did not expect to have so many. So they were running out of money to welcome and settle families. So over 2 years, there were around between 6 to 8,000 Soviet refugees who were held in Rome. According to what I learned after, the United States was not aware that there are so many people. Few times we witnessed the BBC station from London came to Rome and they were interviewed, or to Santa Marinella. There were only few places where people lived, either Rome or Santa Marinella or Ladispoli. These are three famous places. So the BBC representatives went from one place to another. They interviewed people, and then they shared this information with the US government. And again, I'm just telling this as a secondhand story, but that's what I've heard. But what I know for sure, that after this knowledge became available, there were lots of demonstration that Americans went to the White House, to other government, to Capitol, and they were rooting to support Soviet Jews. And one of my friends was still friends. He was, at the time, he was a professor of GW University, and him and his wife and their friends, they all went to this demonstration, and where they tried to get convince government to get more money. There's 8,000 people are staying in Rome, and life was not easy. We didn't have jobs, and it was nearly impossible to get a job. We had some money that the Jewish community gave us. They paid for our built for our places where we lived, but then we went to groceries, and the cheapest grocery, or there was a bakery that created the cake or pie, pastry. They call it wheels of immigration. I don't know why it looks like pretzel, but it was really, I wouldn't eat it. It was not tasty, but it was the the cheapest thing. So immigrants could afford it. And people who, so my family, along with others, 6 or 8,000, is a big break, but I really don't know the numbers. It's what I've heard. They, we did not have, we got a letter of rejection to come to the United States. And there was indefinite. We didn't know what to do, where to go, and we were not the only one. And my family, 4 generations, sitting in 2 little rooms in Santa Marinella, where no windows, just one door, no walls between so-called rooms. Each conversation between family members, each was very opinionated. And these conversations just was for everybody. We all know finally who is who. And this was, this was not good. Plus, not having money even to get on a bus also contributed to stress, and not having jobs. I tried, but there were another 6,000 who tried, and the jobs that people had there range between spreading what you put in the soil to make manure. Yeah. So top physicists or top physicians from the former Soviet Union were happy when they were accepted to do the job, spreading the manure or serving. A friend of mine, I met her in Washington when we were studying for our medical exam. She was a physician also from Kiev, but I never met her. And she came with husband who was a physician as well, and 2 daughters. And they absolutely ran out of money. So she decided that she will try to get a job at the restaurant. So she came to one of the beautiful Italian suburbs restaurant, beautiful sunset. She didn't speak Italian, but somehow she explained to the owner that she worked with, she lied, that she worked with the waitresses for 10 years in Kiev. And he believed her. said, okay, come to work tomorrow. So she said, or do you have time? I don't know. I can,
It's okay. Yes, keep
Yeah.
going.
it's just I think an interesting story now looking back. It was not so funny at that time. So she has this restaurant, and it happened that people who owned the restaurant was a family, and they all were very, very nice. So they realized that she knows nothing, although she worked as a waitress for 10 years in Kiev, and they helped her to assemble the food. So she would go to the customer tables, and they will write, each of the customer will write on the piece of paper, what do they want? And she would go back to the kitchen, and her good friends, not friends, people who work there, would put the tray for her. So she got her first tray with the food that was requested, and she went into some soup that was steaming and wine. So with this tray, she came to the customer table and just dropped it in front of the customer. So you can imagine all the soup splashed, and the owner of the restaurant really didn't trust her 100%, was watching her back what she was doing as her debut. So he immediately ran to her, didn't push her away, but got a tray and everything nicely, very professionally put in front of his clients. And then he called her back to the back room, and he said, what's going on? But it was mainly body language because they did not understand each other. And she said, also with her hands and voice, that this is how we did it in the Soviet Union. He said, no, there is a little serving table right there next to each table. You put your tray on this little table, and then you take plates and you put it in front of your clients. And she said again, no, this is how we did it in Soviet Union. So she was fired before she got fired. Before, right. Fired before she got hired.
So lots of cultural differences
Yeah,
there, right?
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
It's on.
Yeah. But then, so I met her at the medical library in Bethesda, and I know that she is practicing medicine in Texas. After her had the exams, and last time I've heard she was in Texas, and that she went one day to the same Italian restaurant as a visit. So there are lots of stories like that.
Yeah. Well, so I know we have lots of comments and questions. You know, the situation in Rome was obviously of great concern to the Jewish community in the United States. The Jewish community in Omaha chartered several flights to go out to that demonstration in Washington, D.C. And, you know, we have beautiful pictures of Shirley Goldstein and the whole community holding banners from Omaha, Nebraska there. And that really was the demonstration that tipped the tide and created enough pressure to allow the refugees to leave Rome. Of course, with the understanding that the Jewish community would fund the settlement and support of the refugees, right? Because that was some of the concern from Washington. So why don't we take this opportunity, and there's folks online too, Jade, if there's, okay, if people want to jump in and have some comments. I see Anna is here. Maybe Anna would like to share your story with Dr. Shapiro.
Right, we didn't have anybody. I'm very glad that you are here, not in Kiev. Thank you for your remarks.
Go ahead, Gail. Like, could you
No, this was not an option at all. This is the only country which has your nationality. I don't know any other country in the world which would say that you're Jewish or not. Yeah, then you will spend the rest of your life in prison.
Yeah, and it's also an interesting question that you raised, like you change it to a different religion, and in the Soviet Union, being Jewish was not so much a religion as a nationality, right? Line 5 is a nationality.
Right, but also any religion was forbidden. So it didn't matter if you try to go to synagogue, then at the entrance, the person will ask for your ID, your work number, and then will call your supervisor. This is with synagogue. And the same was applicable to any other religion. People could not go to church or mosque. I don't think it exists there.
Yeah, there's some very famous pictures that actually Shirley Goldstein smuggled out of the Soviet Union on one of her earlier trips, showing a protest outside the main synagogue in Moscow, where people knew they couldn't go up to the door of this synagogue because they would lose their jobs.
Yeah.
So people began to sort of hold protests on the streets outside the synagogue. And she was able to smuggle some pictures out, which are actually in the archives over at UNO, showing the police harassing people on the street outside the synagogue. And that was in national publications, and actually was around the world that she got those pictures out. So
yeah, if synagogue in Kiev, there were only 2 in Kiev, and I know the fate of one. It was transformed into the puppet theater. There was no such. Now it's all different, but I know that at that time.
that's a fascinating question. Like, what would happen if you tried to fake your passport, right? Not good. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. I don't know about other people. Only from the literature I can reveal what happened to me. I developed a colon cancer, one of the most common late health effects from radiation in in female. So I went through this. I was diagnosed 11 years ago. And I also had a cataract when I was much younger, and this was a very unknown at that time effect. People were, even doctors didn't know that. So when my eye doctor saw me, he said, well, it's very unusual. You're younger than you're supposed to have, and this cataract look little different. So then I even spending all my life learning about effects. I didn't know about cataract. Or when I came to him with this self-diagnosis, he was so impressed. So he stopped charging me from the day at all. But he performed probably the best surgery that you can have, and I can encourage you, if anybody wants or have doubts about cataract, just go for it. It's life-changing procedure. Yeah, so this is what I can tell.
Nate, do you want to, is there a question? So can you speak a little bit more? I know there's a lot of research on what were some of the widespread impacts of the first responders in terms of the research as a whole.
Yeah, the research as a whole, the people who took kind of the first hit, there were so-called liquidators from the word liquidate, those who were first responders. And in this case, I'm not talking about the physicians, because we mainly went to the areas when the first plume already dissipated. In women, most of the responders were males. So their long-term effects mainly were urinary bladder cancer in men. Women who were first responders and really went to this area for many times, they had breast cancers as one of the increased, also cancer risk increase and cancer development. And people, lots of psychological impact for first responders. They had increased level of anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, increased level of suicide, and alcoholism. So this is where very pronounced effects, and just not to leave this to forget, these particular psychological health effects very typical for any of the disasters, whether it's war or COVID, any disaster cause same psychological, well, similar psychological health. Yeah, thyroid cancer was started, it doesn't consider late, although it didn't occur right away. For thyroid cancer, it was about 6 to 8 years after the disaster. It was dramatic increase of thyroid cancer, in particular in children and adolescents. But most of them survive because it's a treatable disease if diagnosed timely. But the numbers are staggering. It's 9,000 thyroid cancer from 1986 plus 6 years after, from 92 to 2016. And this will be, evaluated all the time for the rest probably of our lives. Another thing is, I forgot to mention, is leukemia. Leukemia raised also not in the general population, but in people who participated as the liquidators, as the first responders. And there were debates whether this leukemia is attributed to some genetic changes or some spontaneous, there are spontaneous cases or any of the disease, but there is a disease called chronic lymphocytic leukemia. It's just a type mainly of adult leukemia, which never ever was attributed as a cause for this radiation. But now it's confirmed, it's under the WHO and International Atomic Agency guidance and agreements that chronic lymphocytic leukemia is currently, for those who were exposed to radiation, the reason, the cause of that disease is radiation. Also increase cataracts, cardiovascular disease. And this was a big study done in Israel. Israel had lots of immigrants after Chernobyl. And one of the big medical schools in Tel Aviv, I think it's center called Soroka, if I pronounce it correctly. They know the doctors who were just seeing patients regularly notice and discuss that there are lots of different unusual respiratory diseases in patients who came from the former Soviet Union. So they established the inpatient clinic. Is a free clinic. Anybody, any immigrants went to the clinic for physical exam, and also Canada, Montreal, the hospital from Montreal, as a gift, gave to this for this project the device which is measuring level of cesium-137 in these patients' bodies. And remember, I said that the half-life is 30 years, so the cesium will disappear from Earth in 300 years. So they did these measurements and they showed that lots of infection, lots of respiratory disease attributed to inhalation of cesium when it was exposed. So this was one of the very interesting studies about, it was about cardiovascular diseases. And then respiratory had also respiratory disease also.
It raises a really fascinating question about where the research is being done to really document medical impacts of post-Chernobyl, that the research is centered in Israel, right? That we're not seeing that in the former Soviet Union at all because of the legacy of lies and cover up, right?
Right. Plus the timing, it didn't show up right away. It showed up 10, 15 years after. So it became, but what's really honorable that the doctors who work there, they notice and they discuss that there is something unusual. And then they put it together this way and came to this conclusion.
So I wanted to sort of follow up with a question about that, about the number of post-Chernobyl Soviet Jewish refugees who flee the country and are able to get out because they can make Aliyah to Israel, right? And because of the protest movement in the United States among the Jewish community that fights for the borders to be opened, do you think that the experience sort of for your generation coming out of the Soviet Union, that this was an opportunity that really Jewish community had that other people in the post-Soviet Union did not?
Well, it was only for Jewish community because Gorbachev was the one who basically said, let my people go. This is, I'm rephrasing. He said, I'm opening all the doors and whoever wants to go, go. And right, how Jewish people heard, let my people go. So this is something very similar, but what we've heard from Gorbachev, and whoever wanted and did not miss that opportunity, they left because, as Anna mentioned, then later in a few years, so 4 years, there were no this route through Europe, only direct flights and only for people with a family who have families in the United States.
So it was limited to the family reunification.
Yes.
Yes. So there was like a window of possibility that
Yeah,
then
that we
that then closed.
jumped through.
Yeah.
Well, I think that I did, but I, yeah, well, I am truthful, yeah. When I came to the United States, this was my main, my goal, even before I started my residency. It took me a year and a half to get through all the exams, and also in English for foreign graduates was a part of this exam for residency. If you pass everything and did not pass English, then you cannot get residency. So I took any opportunities. We had very good friends that we met and made here, and they invited us to dinners, to holidays. And I always, this nice serving, and I always asked, may I please have a pen and piece of paper? And my friends still making joke of it, but the reason was that when I was listening to conversation, if I didn't know any word, some word, I didn't want to interrupt, so I would just write the word and then go home and I look at it.
And of course, that drives home the main point that not just Alla, but all refugees who want to work professionally in their field when they arrive in the United States have to retake all of those exams, right?
Yeah,
That it's like starting all over.
Yeah, it's only for physicians, this luxury. Not any other specialty is forced to do that, or you can skip that and do research or do anything else. Research, you don't have to. Well, yeah, no, I cannot, no, I don't think, yeah. Your first part, I agree, but with the responders, there was really nothing that would separate who is who. They just needed people and they didn't care who they are. It's not that they want to subject Jews to more danger. In place where I was working, I was the only Jew in the medical school where I spent 4 years. There were 130 medical students. I was the only Jew. So it's not that they wanted to,
They were just desperate at that point.
yeah, desperate, absolutely desperate, yeah. Um, there is a study that was just completed by NIH, National Institute of Health, and few other large hospitals, and it's so-called trio studies, like trio. And the reason that it's called trio studies, that they took genetic materials from fathers, mothers, and their offsprings. If there was an opportunity to track the family, then they would do this. And they wanted to see exactly what you're interested in, were there any genetic defects that parents acquired during the radiation. Let's say father was the first responder and mother just lived into contaminated area. And to a big surprise and to happiness, and for happiness for everybody, there was these trio studies that lasted, I believe, 3 or 4 years. They're, in one word, they're negative. There are no genetic, maybe some predisposition that will show show up years or decades after in the offspring that will increase the risk of the cancer. But there is no genetic abnormalities that were passed in, were obvious, at least in these geo studies.
Fascinating.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Telling you about the impact on the environment.
Yeah. And cannot forget. Me too. I remember this was 35+ years, and I was the driver from the ambulance was taking me from one place to another, and some in 1986, and for some reason he wanted to drive me through the woods, not through the with the car stick. It was horrible, but I was there. The car was jumping, and then I saw something that looked like an umbrella that you would put when you're at the beach, an umbrella to protect you from the sun. And I asked him, do you see what the umbrella is doing here? And he probably drove through that piece times. And he said, no, let's get closer. So he stopped the car and we walked to this umbrella, and it was a mushroom that was the height of umbrella. I saw the pictures of fish. I didn't see it because supposedly fish grew to this size of sharks later, but I saw pictures of people who were holding fish from some Chernobyl rivers, the length of this table. It's something unbelievable. And horses are very, very big. They look like elephants. I saw that too. There were lots of these live pictures in 2020. Maybe you remember the wildfires in Chernobyl, where also everybody got very concerned. And the reason is not known, whether the dry weather created. There were a few over 35 years, there were a few wildfires, but not as the extent that one in 2020. That one was really horrible, because the smoke, not even dark, it was black smoke above Kiev. My friends who live in Kiev sent me the picture, and it was hard to believe, but this was wildfires, and crews of helicopter pilots, and same as happened 35 years ago, were sent to that area to put the fires down. And there was one very pretty place for tourists. Some people want to visit Chernobyl. And when some of them asked me, what do you think? I would just say I am against the dark tourism, but this is my opinion. But of course, people didn't, not everybody listened to me, of course. So there were the camp, which had a name, Emerald Camp, right in the middle of this contaminated place. And it was very popular. People with the tour guides were visiting, spending a couple of days there. So that camp burned to the ground, and I saw the picture, so hopefully nobody will go there.
Well, there's been a lot of concern recently, of course, with the Russian government moving troops into the Chernobyl area as part of the movement into Ukraine. Right?
Right.
Are you concerned about the impact on troops or on the environment? This speaks to Dr. Shapiro's being featured in several documentaries, right, on Chernobyl, and an upcoming one, right,
It's already out.
on BBC. Yes, yes, I'll send you all out the link, right?
Please, yeah, you will recognize me. Yeah, I was, interestingly enough, that I was very concerned during the very first days of invasion, which was March, which was April 28th. So the Ukraine was invaded on February 24th, but then Chernobyl itself, Russian troops went there and occupied it, but still let Ukrainians to take care of the facility. I was very concerned because I had an information that people who are taking care of Chernobyl, they have shifts for 36 plus hours, no sleep. And they rejected, they denied, they didn't want to eat anything for some reason. Maybe it was a expression of protest, I don't know. But this was a very scary moment for everybody. What if these people lose their concentration, and because of lack of sleep, they will just lose the control of how to take care of reactors. So this was a very scary moment. But then the second one was when Russian troops arrived, they lifted the soil with the same radioactive cesium, and the levels of radiation went up, not too high, not dangerous, but it went up. So then it was clear, just don't touch the ground. It's written in many guidance about Chernobyl, and Russia participated in the same guidance along with International Atomic Energy Agency. Don't go there and don't touch anything. So when I hear that, oh, Russians are so ignorant that they start digging trenches, I don't know the reason why they did that, but they were not ignorant because they signed this with IAEA years ago that we are not doing anything. Yeah, but they still did it. I don't know why. And the second attempt was even more dangerous than the first one, because with the tank, they didn't go very deep and they didn't cross the area of this red forest, which is the most dangerous place on the planet, where this red forest was buried with bulldozers to be really deep in the ground. So when they started doing that, then the levels of radiation went up, and they did have dosimeters. They acknowledged that, and they left. So Ukrainians really didn't push them to leave. This is another myth. They realized, or their supervisors realized, we shouldn't do that, and they left.
Well, this is a great segue into our evening program. And for those of you who are going to be on campus tonight to hear you speak about this further, why don't we just take one more question, and then we'll wrap up. If you want to come up and speak to Dr. Shapiro, get your book signed. Yes, is that okay? Wonderful.
As far as I know, it didn't, because the structure made out of very heavy material. This is first. But even if they did, it would not cause any problem similar to Chernobyl. There is only one condition, and that needs to be followed. Keep core cool. How I memorize this. Keep core cool, the 3 words, and the core of the reactor with the water is protected. And if there is an electricity, then the rods that are going down in the water, then they are cool, and they would not cause the meltdown that happened before.
The damage to the concrete would be
No,
would be not necessarily
right,
important.
right.
Yeah. Good. All right. Well, thank you all very much. Thank you for being here and have an opportunity to chat with Dr. Shapiro today. So please, if you have a few moments, take advantage of having the chance to chat.